Hello friend, my name is Kush and I'm an artist. Yes, indeed. I did a series of artworks from Dark Souls and I hope you like them. Do let me know which one you like best. The first artwork I did back in late 2024. And this was the signature bonfire, a place to rest and await the end of the world, in graphite among pages of an old sketchbook. The next artwork I did almost a year before the last one. Chaos Witch Quilog. And her I painted in ink. And at the time I absolutely loved how she turned out. She has one of the most intriguing character designs in the game, and is probably the only character I've drawn more than once. When I started working on this series of artworks last year, I really wanted to work on my understanding of color. To that end, I decided to paint some of the rings from the game. And the first one was the blue deerstone ring. I used micron pens for the line work, and for painting I worked in watercolor. The next was the ring of favor and protection. This one was really tricky. Getting the metallic nature of gold is not an easy thing. One really cool thing I noticed though was that the edges of the ring were lined with ridges that looked like teeth. And with the goddess this ring represents, I think that was fascinating. The Chloranthy ring was the most realistic artwork in the series. I think I did really well in the subtle variation of temperature in this one. I ended up using a lot of viridian and many shades of yellow. The fourth was Havel's ring. This ring had a lot of rocks embedded into it, and it boosts your ability to carry heavy burdens. Here I worked in Payne's Grey, Yellow Ochre, and a few shades of brown. I think the metal here looks really well done, although the rocks, I'm not too sure about those. What do you think? The next were the serpent rings, and their designs were what inspired me to draw and paint rings in the first place. The first is the silver serpent ring, and this is the best I did as far as painting metal goes. I also did an atmospheric background for this one. For the gold coveted serpent ring, I painted the scales in the back with micron pens, and the details closer to us I did in watercolors with a pointy brush. Which ring do you like best? Do let me know. Then, or perhaps before the rings, I painted the giant crow in Copic markers, and for this one I have a few of the process pictures. I think I could have done a lot better here with watercolors instead of Copic markers, especially in the background. Here I wanted to go for a mosaic idea behind the crow, although I should have probably extended it into the entirety of the background. And the crow carried us all the way from the asylum to the Firelink Shrine, a place of hope where we return time and again in our quest to kindle the flames or watch them perish. I painted the shrine in green and violet and yellow, in a swirling harmony of light and dark, which we all must contend with. While working on these, I looked at a lot of concept art and the Dark Souls art book, and in there I found the Hellkite Drake, and I just had to paint them. Despite being red, this needed a surprising amount of green as well. The gaping dragon was transformed by their ravenous hunger. Their chest opened to reveal a gaping maw which devoured everything in its path. This is another of Dark Souls' most tragic designs. For this I worked on the background digitally as well, Although I wondered if I should have made the poisonous spew green instead of yellow and orange. We had been tasked to ring the two bells of awakening, one high above and another down below. And the former was guarded by the bell gargoyles. When you're doing a series of artworks from Dark Souls, you do not expect the bell gargoyles to look like that. I was so amazed by how this turned out. When I started, I did not expect that it would be so good. I love the flames and the white halo behind them. I have no idea how I got to that point, but I'm so glad I did. The second bell was guarded by Chaos Witch Quelaag, who had been transformed alongside her sisters into a half spider of sorts. I love what I did with the flames here, and in a parallel to the gargoyles, I gave her a halo as well. Although looking back, I lost a lot of the effect of that flame in the finished artwork. I'm not a 100% on the background, but I did go for something which was riskier, a gradient of sorts instead of a flat dark. So I like that aspect of it. Although I do love the strands of red above her, and they were a very impulsive addition, and I think I should have taken them a bit further. I also added a lot of color in the shadows here. I really like that. I worked on this a bit digitally before moving on. I also drew her sister, known as the Fair Lady, in Copic markers. She had absorbed the sickness of those around her. She was blind and could barely move. And when we meet her, she mistakes us for her sister Quelaag, whom we had recently felled. She's one of my favorite characters in the game, and I'm really proud of the feeling of this artwork. I also drew the most cursed Ornstein and Smo ever. But then we logged in and we did a little better. For this, I played around with a cool idea. I went for a zigzag kind of composition with their weapons, and I painted each section that the weapons divided in a different color. Although I would have liked to make each section a little bit darker. By this point, I had been working in watercolors for weeks, and I was spent. So instead of drawing Guinevere in Graphite, and then inking her with micron pens, and then proceeding to paint her in watercolors, I worked in charcoal. Charcoal for me does not take very long at all, and although I always wonder how she would have turned out as a painting, I think this worked really great as well. Gravelord Nito, I drew him in Graphite, and I tried to keep it simple because his actual design is freaking insane. And I quite like how it turned out. This again did not take very long at all, unlike the watercolor pieces which took me forever. The next great lord I drew was Isolith, and she was the mother of the two chaos witches we saw earlier. And I drew her in charcoal before she became corrupted and turned into the bed of chaos. With Gwendolyn, I returned to watercolors once again. I painted them primarily in violet and gold. I love how their helmet turned out. I also worked on this a bit digitally. I really like that the composition, it reminded me of mirrors and illusions. I'm not sure how well I did there though. Crossbreed Priscilla, I drew her on toned paper, the only one in the series. And her I drew in graphite and white chalk. And I'm really fond of all the whites in this one. And I also drew falling snow for the first time. Also, I love the sheen of the scythe in the back. The way I drew Great Wolf Sif was greatly inspired by the art of Okami. And I decided to keep Artorius' greatsword entirely vertical. And for some reason it looks very aesthetically pleasing to me. Although I think I should have drawn a circle somewhere as well. I depicted it like they have 4 tails, and it also represents the abyss they would confront. Seed the Scaleless has one of the most intriguing designs in the game. He was the only scaleless dragon, and he betrayed them all. I started with the foreground, which I painted in violet. I also ended up using several shades of blue, turquoise, and magenta. I drew it so it seemed like he was perched atop a crown of crystals, and the transparency of watercolor really worked well for the crystals. I love how vibrant this beast turned out to be. As we neared the end, I drew Artorias the Abyss Walker. I love drawing flames and smoke, and here I drew the darkness and the abyss exactly as I would draw them. Artorias the Abyss Walker. He ventured into the abyss to confront the dark, and instead was consumed by it. On the right in violet and dark was the abyss, and the white I thought was something Artorias represented, the fight against it. I also really like how the flames behind him turned out, which almost feel like a cape. Fire is really fun to draw. You have very little idea how it'll turn out in the end. And speaking of the end, finally I drew Lord Gwyn. By this point I had been drawing for weeks and was cooked, and I decided to paint this in ink. Unfortunately, this paper was meant for dry media and it did not receive the ink well at all. Still, I thought it was thematically very fitting for Lord Gwyn, who had turned into a husk of himself. And I liked the line work well enough. And that concluded this series of mine. I hope you had fun and liked some of these. Do let me know which ones. And if you would like to pick up prints for any of these, do check out my print shop, the link for which should be on my channel. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.